I didn't know this, but Alan had already made up his mind when he came to see me to build a car for him. And I thought I had to sell him on my skill and knowledge of car building. And Alan doesn't work that way, but I didn't know that at the time. Alan is always a year or two ahead. Alan has always figured everything out. Alan has always thought things through. He makes no snap decisions. So that decision for us to get together was already done, and it went on from there. It was hands off in the beginning because I told them that we were going to do things differently than they had been previously done, and we were going to create the state-of-the-art kind of a short track car. And so that intrigued him. So I started making all the 1/10 scale drawings of every part on the car, the body, the frame, all the pedals, where everything went. And he got very frustrated because he thought I was wasting time going through all that detail. And when I got done, I showed it to him, and he looked at it, and I still didn't know when Alan was serious and when he wasn't serious, you know, and he played games with you a little bit. And so he looked at it and he started questioning things, and we reached a point where we started to build it. And then he would stand there and study that drawing. And then I'd be building the car and working on it, and he'd say, "Why are we doing this?" And I explained that, well, my thought was on that. He wouldn't say boo. So I'm thinking, well, what is this guy thinking, you know? And so next day he'd come around and he'd say, "I thought about that, and this is what we're going to do, and I like that, but we're going to change this a little bit." And that's the way the whole process worked. I had to get it past him, but we were doing things that weren't being done. So he had to take time to think them through, and he never made a snap decision. Everything, this guy was phenomenal to think things through. He could think so far ahead. It's hard to imagine somebody to be have that skill to that level. First time Alan took the car out, he had fast time, won a feature. It allowed me to work with Stan and make a little commercial for the newspaper. And then second time out, the same thing. And so he was really happy because things were going well, and it was fun. You know, everybody's got an ego, so we're all riding our egos, and so it was fun. But Alan was unique in that when you'd work on the car, he would double check everything. He'd give lists. He always worked from lists. When we were building the car, he'd come with his do list for the day. He did not stop, no matter how many hours it took, that day until he had completed everything on that do list. And so some days were shorter, some days were longer, but this guy had thought everything through before he ever did anything. And people thought, well, he made snap decisions. He never made a snap decision. Alan didn't have a big ego. He'd never put anybody else down. He was hard to figure out because his mind was always way ahead of where he was standing. And so he'd tell you something, but he didn't tell you all of it. So you were really kind of playing a guessing game as to where he was going with all of this. But my theory on dirt racing was not so much running sideways, but running it more like an asphalt track. And he liked that. That worked well for him. And then that carried over onto the asphalt. And racing, of course, has got two components, horsepower and tires. And that's really what racing is all about. So the detail of tire management and weight transfer and all these things, he and I could really work together on because we all thought in the same paths of roll centers and what's the car going to do and how's that tire going to wear and what's all these little details of what makes a difference between average and superior. So that worked out great. We had fun doing that. In my gym at home, I had posters of Alan's cars as time went along, and when his death came, I mean, I had to take them down. I couldn't even deal with it. I had to put them away. And it took me about 5 years before I got past that, where I could put them back up again. So I was not surprised at what he accomplished. because he was light years ahead of everybody. I mean, when he was given an opportunity to run the 11 car for Jim Johnson, he turned it down. And there isn't anybody in NASCAR that would have turned that down. But it didn't fit his long-term picture. And he knew that two bullheads can't get along. And Junior's a bullhead, and it's going to be Allan's way or the highway. He knew that wasn't going to work. So the guy was very perceptive. That doesn't surprise me that he went as far as he did, because he actually has the ability to think everything through before he does it. In my mind, his legacy is that when he went to NASCAR, he took them to school. They didn't have a clue what this guy was going to bring to NASCAR. And for him to be crew chief, owner, driver, literally do it all and do it better than anybody, he made people stop and take note. And so, to me, that's his legacy. He just hammered them when he got there, and they knew he was there. You know, and when I went, for example, when I went to Michigan, and you looked at all the cars, and they're all pretty, and they're all painted, and they're all polished, and they got a crew of 10, 12, 15, and there was Allan with 3, 4 guys, and you could see some of the stuff was hand-painted, you could see that this was fixed, and nothing was perfect. Didn't have time. And yet, he could beat them. He beat him with knowledge, not fancy paint jobs, not double talk, you know. He was the real deal.